Now I'm going to explain the fourth house and the sixth house in astrology and how to interpret charts that have connections between two of these houses. Let's start by making sure we understand what the houses themselves signify. And let's begin with the sixth house. So the sixth house is the area of sky that's directly below the western horizon. And that's the reason why it symbolizes everything that it symbolizes. Everything that the sixth house symbolizes has to do with upholding or supporting the things that the western horizon, the sunset, symbolizes. You can categorize those symbolisms of the West into these three things: other people, death, and intangibility or invisibility. So the sixth house supporting those three things means the sixth house symbolizes everything which is pro-others and everything which is pro-death and everything which is pro-intangibility. So this is why the sixth house is well known as a house of work. Pro-others, what you do for others. It's not work in the sense of adventurous, entrepreneurial, ambitious stuff. It's work in the sense of your responsibilities, your chores, your duties, the schedules you have to keep, the deadlines you have to meet. So it has a big impact on how dutiful we are and how, in that sense, how moral. Now, the sixth house is also the house of debt. And that is because we work for others because we have indebtedness to them. What we owe others is our duty to fulfill. So the sixth house has to do with what we owe others. Finally, the other thing about being pro-other people is that the sixth house represents people that don't support you. They support others, so that's why it's known as the house of enemies. So all the people in the world that are more interested in helping others than they are in helping you, that kind of enemy. Now, finally, related to this very intimately is the fact that the sixth house has to do with enmity. In other words, your ability to deal with enemies. So it's a house which is very important for how the person fights and struggles. So now you understand the sixth house as the house which is pro-others. Let's also get clear about it being pro-death. That's why the sixth house is famous as the house of disease. Disease is pro-death. Disease leads to death. So the health or illness of a person depends a lot on the conditions of the sixth house. In particular, the sixth house is very connected with digestion. And basically, our ability to digest food is our ability to get vitamins and so forth from the food and be healthy. So most illnesses actually comes from our inability to eat right or to process the foods correctly, digest the foods correctly. Now we understand how the sixth house is pro-others. We understand how it's pro-death. Now let's finish it off by understanding how it's pro-intangibility. This is why the sixth house is the house of confusion. The opposite of confusion is knowledge or knowing. It means making something more clear, making something more seeable, more visible. So the sixth being pro-intangibility, it's not going to be pro-knowledge, it's pro the opposite. It's pro-confusion. And confusion, in turn, leads to worry, anxiety. So it's a house of worry and doubt, uncertainty about things. So that's the sixth house. Now let's do a quick look at the fourth house as well before we move on to talk about how to interpret connections between these two houses. The fourth house is the area of the sky that's directly below your feet. It's the most underground of all the houses. And that's the basis for everything that it symbolizes. It symbolizes the thing that's on the inside, the unseen inner part of things, the inner self. And this also has three basic categories. The inner self means your emotions. That's one thing. The inner self also means the part of your life which is not public. So it has to do with your privacy and your private life and your private things. And also the inner part of the self is what the outer part is built on. So it's like about foundations and roots. where you come from. These are the three main categories of what the fourth house symbolizes. So in this category of emotion, the fourth house is the house for happiness. In other words, how good are your emotions functioning? So it's a house for mental health, happiness, etc. Also, the ability to have positive emotions is related to our desires, because emotion is the result of fulfilling or not fulfilling our desires. So the fourth house also has to do with desires that lead to happiness, or in other words, devotions. How we feel attached to things and inclined towards things and favorable towards things, the things that we want. So it's the house for devotion and the house for love. And in turn, that means that it's a very feminine house. It's a caring house. It's a house which wants to attach and cooperate. So it's the house for the archetypical female, which is the mother. That is a good picture of how the fourth house represents our emotions and what are the facets of that. Now let's turn our attention to how the fourth house represents privacy. This is why that fourth house is a shy house, and it has to do with our shyness, our quietude, and our modesty. And this is also why the fourth house has to do with your actual home. It's the house of the chart that has to do with your house, where you live. Because your home is your private spot, a place where you can go to be apart from the public world. It's not only just your home, but all of the things which are yours privately owned. And then finally, because it's the home and privacy, what do you do ultimately when you're private in your house? You fall asleep. So the fourth house has to do with how well we sleep, how thoroughly we rest, how much peace and tranquility we feel. And this is also directly related to the fact that it's the house for emotions and happiness. Now let's wrap up our survey of the fourth house by getting some clarity about the fact that the fourth house represents our roots. So there's two things about roots. First of all, the fourth house is the house for your stability, your foundation, how unshakable you are, how strong is your foundation. And that stability is going to be based on your happiness, actually. Your emotional contentment will give stability. And then also the fourth house has to do with your ancestry and your culture, and how comfortable you feel with your own culture. Now we understand the sixth house and the fourth house, and now we're ready to talk about how we can interpret charts where the sixth and the fourth house get connected. So you may ask, how will houses get connected? There's a simple way and there's a less obvious way. The simple way is houses get connected by their lords. So if you have, for example, the fourth lord in the sixth house, or the sixth lord in the fourth house, or the fourth and the sixth lords joined in any house, or the fourth and the sixth lords mutually aspecting each other from any houses, then you have a connection between the fourth and the sixth house. That's the simple way to see if there's connections between houses. The less obvious way is in terms of how prominent the houses are. If they're prominent in a sequence, then the houses get connected. So for example, if your fourth house is your most prominent and your sixth house is the second most prominent, then the fourth and sixth are going to be working in connection in sequence. It's very difficult to figure out what your sequence of house prominence is. So I worked out a report that will do it for you. It's called The Houses of Life. It gives you a whole bunch of information about the houses and what they signify and their sub-significations, etc. But one of the key gems that's inside it is this thing, the DNA code of the houses. It's the house sequence. And you can use this code to know what your house sequences are. So if you want to order a copy of that report for yourself or for a friend or whatever, you can get it from my website, victorcara.com. And if you want to go straight to the report, just add a / and an H. And if you don't feel like typing that in, I'll put the link in the description below. And now let's get to it. How do we interpret charts where the fourth house and the sixth house are connected? First of all, the fact that the fourth house is fundamentally feminine and mothery is in direct conflict with the fact that the sixth house is fundamentally inimical or masculine in its nature. So you have a clash between mother and enemy. Mother is the symbol of the fourth, and enemy is the symbol of the sixth. So the interpretation here is that the native's mother faces difficulties. And you have to read the rest of the chart to get more clarity about that, but that's the basic cookie dough that you're working with when you're going to interpret this. The mother of this person has problems. Doesn't have an easy life. Maybe they die young, maybe they're ill, maybe they had rough marriage, maybe they have rough childhood, maybe they are not a good mother. Now, secondly, and related to this, the fourth is the house for love and devotion, but the sixth is the house for fighting and enmity. So that's another clash. And therefore, we expect this native to have an inimical disposition. That means they'll be prone to treat situations as if they were problems and to treat people as if they were enemies. And to feel actually threatened, to feel like these people are enemies. It's not like they're voluntarily deciding, oh, this person, I'm going to treat him like my enemy. But they feel threatened easily by people and situations. So they react to the people in the situations in defensive or argumentative or confrontational ways. The third thing about the fourth and the sixth house is that the fourth is the house for rest, sleep, peace, and the sixth is the house for work, chores, duty. They're unable to rest when they're supposed to rest, and they're unable to work when they're supposed to work. They hate chores. They hate duties, they hate responsibilities, and also they don't feel comfortable just going to sleep. They don't like to sleep either. They don't know how to relax very well. And finally, the fourth house is the house of peace, and the sixth house is the house of worry. So that's another direct clash. Peace means tranquility, worry means anxiety. So it's very related to the previous thing, rest versus work, but this is a new facet on it, which brings out another interpretation. This person will be difficult to satisfy. And the reason why I say that is because peace means tranquility. Tranquility means placation, placidity. Placation means you've been satisfied. So you've achieved calmness. So the fourth house has that sense of feeling satisfied, feeling content. The sixth house, on the other hand, is anxiety. Anxiety comes from dissatisfaction. It comes from worry or concern that you will not get what you need or want someone else will take it. So when we're talking about the clash between peace and worry, we're really talking about the clash between satisfaction and need. So the natives who have connections with the fourth and the sixth house, they tend to be very difficult to satisfy. They have endless needs. So this leads to a couple of character traits like envy, lust, and debasity. Envy is they're never thinking they have enough, and they're always tending to think other people have extra. Lust, I never have enough, I want more. And debasity, I need more, I better get it. I don't have time to wait to get it the proper way. I'll get it in an improper way. So fourth and sixth house connections are a little bit tough, aren't they? They don't have a whole lot of stuff that's easy. Here are some people to give a face to this, to take it out of the theoretical realm and start to show you how this looks in real charts. Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer, and his astrological lookalike, Adolf Hitler. They both have this fourth, sixth house connection and many other things in common. Hugh Hefner, lusty, debased. Hugh Hefner, Marilyn Monroe, Jim Morrison. Edgar Casey, particularly interesting with the sleep thing. And Barack Obama. Barack Obama? So let's finish up the video by looking at 3 of these charts in detail so that you can see how to interpret something like a 4th and 6th house connection in the context of a whole chart. Let's first of all look at Adolf Hitler, because he seems kind of like a poster child of all these problems. His mother faced difficulties. That was the thing that pushed him over the edge. He's very inimical, right? Very treating people as enemies. Doesn't sleep well, doesn't relax, etc. And very difficult to satisfy. So he does seem like the poster child of all the bad stuff that's possible from the connection of the 4th and the 6th house. Why is that? Well, if you look at his chart, you'll see he's got the 6th lord in the 4th house, and it is debilitated there. So this is a thing that you need to think about. Yeah, I have the 6th lord in the 4th house, and Adolf Hitler has the 6th lord in the 4th house. But is it in the same dignity? Adolf Hitler's is debilitated. The worst dignity. Not only is it debilitated, it's conjoined with Ketu, which is an amplifier, and the moon, so it has a huge effect on his psyche. Besides this is the main thing, but besides this, he also has a very malefic chart in general. So he has Mars and Saturn strongly aspecting his ascendant. And he has the 1st lord inheriting the qualities of Mars by planetary war in the 8th house, in the nakshatra called Barney, which has to do with death and strictness, hardness, rigidity. And finally, his ascendant is being dominated by the 12th lord from Aries. So the whole chart overall has a malefic, hard nature to it. And in that context, you have the 6th lord in the 4th house, debilitated with Ketu and affecting the moon. That's Adolf Hitler. Now, let's take a look at Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe is not really a poster child for being inimical to other people, although she does have mother-faced difficulties. She does have difficulty sleeping, and she's very difficult to satisfy. But she's mostly like a picture of the lusty, sexy side of the possibilities of 6th and 4th house combinations. So what is it with her? Her 4th lord, Mars, is in the 8th house. 8th house is for sexuality. And it's Mars, the testosterone, the lust factor. So you're putting Mars in the 8th house gives a lot of libido. And she has Venus as the 3rd lord in Aries, aspecting the 3rd house, while Mars also aspects it. So the 3rd house and the 8th house are the 2 focal points that generate and libido and ambition in general. Her 3rd house is being aspected by its lord from a Mars sign, from Aries, and also being aspected by Mars. So you're getting all this confluence of the lust generation on her. And then finally, her 1st lord is with the 11th lord in Rohini in the 11th house. Rohini is a very sexual nakshatra. The 11th house is a house for pleasures. Gemini is also a sexual sign in a playful way, or an intelligent or sophisticated way. So she has all that. So her chart is not like Adolf Hitler's. Adolf Hitler's is a very hard, male antagonistic chart, strict, in which the 6th lord is in the 4th house debilitated. Marilyn Monroe has a very sexy chart, pleasure-oriented chart, in which the 6th lord is in the 4th house. And then finally, Barack Obama doesn't really seem to be a poster child of any of these qualities. He doesn't seem to strike me as like, oh, this is a good example of 4th and 6th combinations. But that's why I want to talk about him in this video. So the thing with Barack Obama is his chart is hardly about his 6th and 4th house combination. What's really, really super dominant in Barack Obama's chart is that he has the Sun and Mercury with Rahu in Leo in the 7th house, aspecting the ascendant. So this is making 2 Raja Yogas with Rahu that are aspecting the ascendant. Raja Yoga is the yoga for kings, and it's being formed by the Sun from Leo. So the dominant thing in his chart is really that he's king-oriented, government-oriented, rulership-oriented. Somewhere mixed into all of the other stuff about his chart, somewhere along the line, he's got this thing about the fourth and sixth house having a connection, but it's not a prominent, dominant thing, and it doesn't gel much with the other factors in his chart, except that this inimical attitude will make him want to beat other people. So it will make him want to run for president and win. So there you go. We looked at the fourth and sixth house. We understand what they are separately. We understand the theory of what they represent. We looked at it in some 3 real charts. I hope that you enjoyed that. Don't forget, you can get that report to show you if you have your house sequences. You can get it at that URL, victorcara.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video. Thanks.